Yeah, this thing is ridiculously fast.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Today, I'm going to be servicing a new purchase. This is a 2012 Yamaha FZ1. Items that I will be servicing include the oil and filter, the air filter. I will go over check all of my fluid levels on the bike. I will also check the health of the charging system, and later on I will post a picture of the checklist that I use to service these systems. And really what it's about when you purchase a motorcycle, especially a used motorcycle, the first service that you do is really about making sure that the bike is safe for you to ride. So I did some initial safety checks when I looked at the bike, and before purchasing, I've gone over some of the items on the checklist before doing the last video, just making sure all my fluid levels are good. But I'll go over those again in this episode and actually video them so that you can see what I'm doing. So I hope you enjoy. And the checklist is really good for any motorcycle that you want to service. And that was the checklist I used was I previously worked at a motorcycle dealership, and it was really the checklist that we used to make sure that all the bikes we sold were safe. There's nothing proprietary in the checklist itself. It's not rocket science, but it's just a really good place to start. I'm going to fire up the bike now and get it ready for an oil change. I'm going to let it heat up to temperature. That way I can accurately check all of my systems, and also the oil drains out of the bike more efficiently. It's a little bit thinner when it's warm. So we'll let the bike warm up and get started in on servicing it. While the bike is warming up, and since it is already equipped with a battery tender plug here, what I've done first is I've charged the battery overnight, making sure that it has a green light on the charger and a full charge. And I'm going to, now that the bike is close to up to temp, I'm going to check the charging system. And to do that, I just have a multimeter here, and I'm going to set it to voltage, direct current, and the black lead goes in the exposed plug here, and the red lead goes in the other one. You want to just make sure those don't touch. So what I want to do is just move them around until I get a good solid reading. At idle, it's right around 14 volts, which is perfect. And I'm going to rev the bike up to about 5,000 RPM and just make sure it's not overcharging. Okay, my steady state charge there was 14.2 volts, which is perfectly where it should be at 5,000 RPM with the bike warmed up. You always want to check the charging system while the bike is warm. They will often function well when they're cold, and if they start to fail, what they'll do is typically fail when they're warmed up. So the health of the charging system looks great. While I was checking the electrical system, I also pulled the seat off and checked my battery connections, make sure that they are secure and that everything looks good, and you just don't want any looseness here or corrosion in either of those spots, and everything looks fine. While the bike is warming up, it's also a great time to check all of your lights in your horn. So we can see here my high beams work, my 2 running lights, one on either side in the front there, those work. I'm going to check my low beams. My low beams are working. Some sport bikes with dual headlights, when it's on low beam, only one of the beams illuminates, so don't freak out if that's the case on your bike. So, turn signals. There's another thing that you want to check for on a liquid cooled bike. Right now the cooling fans just turned on, and that's a great sign they're doing what they're supposed to do. The temperature that they kicked on at is right around 210 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's a typical time that they turn on. So we'll continue to check our lights. That's the front brake and the rear brake. So all of my brake lights work, my driving lights work, turn signals work. I'm gonna hit the horn. So another thing that on this bike we can check while the engine is warm is the coolant level. And it's got a coolant tank right here, and it is right exactly where it should be, warm, right at the full line, and that's what we want. The oil filter on this bike is located on the left side of the engine, just behind the exhaust, and as you can see, I've actually placed an oil filter wrench on it, and we'll use that to get the oil filter off. And the 17mm drain plug is right there, so it'll afford us easy access here. Because it's on this side of the motor, I may, once most of the oil is drained out, I may put it on its side stand to just let all the oil drain over to this side and drain out. But right now it's on its center stand just for easier access to things here. So as you can see, I'm using a K&N performance oil filter. The nice thing is they have the 17mm lug on the top here, and that's just in case somebody over tightens it. You can more easily get that off. But what I'll do before actually installing the oil filter is I'm going to prime it with oil. I'll actually fill it up several times and let the oil settle, and use the same motorcycle specific oil that I'm going to use in the bike, but I'll fill it up and then quickly put it on, and you lose very little oil that way, but then when you start the bike it's not doing a dry start. You have more oil up in the engine, and it's just a couple of seconds, but over time those startups with really a dry motor, over time that can take a toll on the wear of your engine. Alright, I have filled my oil filter with oil, and I'm going to clean the surfaces here for the oil filter and for the drain plug, and reinstall both of those, and then I will be ready to fill the bike with oil. We're using 1040 today. This is Maxima oil, and it's a motorcycle specific oil and designed for bikes like these. You also want to use a clean funnel, and you just don't want to be putting junk down in your engine that you don't need to. Alright, once our oil level is up to the upper line here, and I'm not sure if you can see it in the video, but it is. It's up to the upper line. The bike is on the center stand. What we'll do is start the bike, let it run for a few minutes, and let the oil settle back down, and we'll check to see where it is and finalize our oil level and complete our oil change. We have let the oil settle, and it's about halfway up between low and full on the center stand, so we'll top the oil level off to the closer to the full mark and call it done. The next area that we're going to look at is the brake fluid level, and for the rear brakes it's actually behind this side cover, so we're going to remove that and take a look. Alright, we can see the brake fluid is at the upper level here, and it looks fairly clear, looks to be in good shape there. So what I will do, I'll actually just going to pull this out and open the top, just make sure everything's okay, just for peace of mind. So we're going to look at our upper front brake fluid level next, and you want to make sure that the cap is level when you check this, and it honestly looks like things are good in there, but it's kind of dark. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to just pop this lid off. I've already loosened the screws, but I'm going to pop that lid off, take a look at things, make sure the brake fluid is clear and that the level is properly set. Okay, everything looked great with the front brake fluid level. And now what I'm going to do is check my pad thickness on my rear brakes. And just by looking at the pad thickness here, I can see that this set of brakes is actually almost brand new. What I'm going to do is just check the actual thickness of the pads here. And those are right at 5 millimeters and probably around 6/32. So this is just a gauge. I use this to measure tire tread depth as well, but it's about 6/32. So these are almost brand new, so that's good, and we'll go check the front. Okay, the front brake pads, it's actually a little bit harder to show here on the video, but when I did measure them, they measured about 4.5 30-seconds, which is around 3 millimeters in thickness. So they've got plenty of meat on those as well. So we've checked the brake fluid front and back, we've checked the brake pads front and back, and I have ridden the bike. The brake action on this bike is excellent. So we have effectively serviced our braking system. At some point, I would probably, I'll probably go ahead and just bleed the front brakes, flush out the old fluid that's in there, but I'll save that for another video. Okay, moving on to the front tire, there are several things that we're going to check. I have already inspected this bike inspected these tires for dry rot, and I didn't see any. We're also going to inspect the valve stems for dry rot. That's unfortunately a common thing that happens. And you want to actually pull it to the side and see if there are any cracks. This bike looks good, the valve stems look good. We're also going to check the tread depth on this, and again I'm going to use my little gauge here. and right around 3/30 seconds. So it's showing some wear, but it definitely has some life left in it. We'll go around and look at the rear tire here next. One more thing, we do want to check the tire pressure. Now I have checked the tire pressure in my front and back tires actually before riding the bike, and I would suggest you do the same. And there is oftentimes a badge on the bike that tells you what it should be. Now there are two badges on this one. The one at the frame says to run 42 psi front and 42 psi rear. This one that is on the swing arm says 36 psi front and 42 psi rear. And that's honestly, I would probably go with a 36-42 on this bike. I just wanted to show you, when you do check your tire pressure, you want to use a good quality tire pressure gauge. And it's just a critical thing on a motorcycle. If you don't have a good quality tire pressure gauge, I suggest you get one. Cheap tire pressure gauges where the rod comes out of them, I wouldn't trust those. You're literally trusting them with your life, so get a good one if you own a motorcycle. Okay, moving on to the rear tire. We've already checked the tire pressure at 42 psi. We are checking the valve stems for dry rot. And these valve stems still look okay. It's a good idea anytime you replace the tires to also replace your valve stems. It's a couple bucks, but you know, it can save your life. I've actually had one of these blow out on me at about 70 miles an hour, and I was very fortunate to get the bike back under control and home safely. So that's something that since then I always check the valve stem condition on a bike. Okay, this tire, measuring the tread depth, measured anywhere from 3 to 4 thousandths, and it's getting there. It's got some wear on it, but it also has a little bit of life left in it. So I'll run this for a while, and when it gets down to about 2 thousandths on the tread depth, I will go ahead and order up a new set of tires for it. One of the last items that we need to service here is the chain. And so you have chain slack. That's the distance between where this chain travels. You want to measure it right about halfway between the sprockets, and you actually want to adjust the chain to the tightest spot. So wherever you have the least amount of travel, up and down here. And this bike is on the center stand, and the spec for this bike are, when it's on the center stand, you want chain slack to be between 25 and 35 millimeters, which is 25 millimeters is basically an inch. And so if I hold this still and look here, I have more than an inch. That's honestly right around 35 millimeters between those two. And so it's just a little bit towards the loose end of the spectrum. What I'll do is loosen everything up here and go ahead and tighten the chain up so that we're towards the tighter end of things, which would be almost exactly an inch. So you just would want the from where this center is, you want that to go up and down, maximum of about an inch, and that's on the tightest spot on the chain. So as you can see, it's about 1.5 inches right now. I have removed the axle sliders from this bike and loosened the axle nut on the other side. So I'm going to proceed to clean and adjust my chain. And to clean the chain, I'm just going to use a little bit of WD-40, no harsh cleaners or anything like that. This chain is honestly pretty clean as it is, but we'll get it looking brand new. It's an O-ring type chain, so you really don't need to keep a whole lot of lubricant on it. It's good to just kind of get them clean and wipe them down, and just clean them every now and then. And the clean chains don't wear nearly as quickly as dirty chains with all the dirt and all that stuff. So we'll go ahead and do that. Our last step in the process of adjusting the chain and servicing it is we're actually going to use some product that's called Maxima Chain Wax, and it's a chain lube. And for me, this is my preferred product. It actually stays on the chain. It doesn't fling all over the bike, and I've used it for years with no ill effects. So I would suggest always doing, when you're spraying chemicals, do them outdoors, just for the fumes. And she's done. Another item on the checklist is your fork seals. And what you want to do is just look at the forks, make sure there's no streaks or anything on here. This bike is perfectly clean on both sides. Just walk you around over here too. There's no fork oil leaking, and so these honestly look great. I've ridden the bike, there's no looseness in the suspension, there's no clanking when I hit bumps, so I'm pretty confident that the suspension itself is in good shape. Here's the rear shock, and you can see there's no evidence of any leaks or drips. The bike does ride nicely, there's no bad noises coming from the back suspension either, so everything looks to be great. Right now I am disassembling the bike in order to check out the air filter. I've already removed the white plastic piece, and I've moved this piece out of the way. And I'll undo these, and this whole fuel tank should rotate up, and I'll be able to access the air filter right under here. Alright, the last thing I'm going to be doing today is making sure that my bolts are clamping down this handlebar nice and tight. So I'm going to just give these an extra torque and make sure that they're good to go. And that will be it for our 2012 Yamaha FZ1 service. She is ready to rock, ready to hit the road. And probably in a couple thousand miles I'll put on a new set of tires, and when I do that I will also bleed out the brake system front and back. That way I've got all new brake fluid and just peace of mind. Like I say, I did check what was in there and it looked good. But hope this was helpful. If you have an FZ1 or just another motorcycle and you're looking to do a kind of a regular maintenance on it, if you have any questions, you can let me know down below. Thank you. Have a great day.